My family was a masterpiece of deception, a portrait of the perfect American dream painted over a canvas of neglect. On the outside, we were the family with the sprawling estate, the gleaming cars, and a chain of boutique hotels that everyone envied. Yet, beneath that polished surface, I was a ghost in my own home, a daughter they barely saw. They had a favorite, of course. My younger brother, Lucas, was their golden child. His path paved with luxury cars and a trust fund that he spent faster than he could earn. I, on the other hand, was the one left to fend for myself. I worked 2 jobs to put myself through college, clawed my way into a career as a financial planner, always believing that if I fought hard enough, if I earned enough, they would finally see me. I was wrong. My success was as invisible to them as I was. The only person who ever truly saw me was my grandfather, the quiet patriarch who built our family's wealth from the ground up. He was the one who, years ago, had set up a $5 million trust fund, a quiet promise to split his fortune equally between Lucas and me. He was the only one who didn't play favorites, the one true constant in my life. Then, one brisk morning, the world I knew shattered. The phone in my hand vibrated, my mother's name flashing on the screen. Her voice was thin and brittle, a sound that sliced through the mundane routine of my day. "Hadley," she choked out, "it's your grandfather. He's had a terrible fall. You need to come home, now." My stomach clenched, a cold knot of dread tightening in my gut. My grandfather, my rock, the one person who cared. Without a moment's hesitation, I canceled my flight to Chicago, a business trip that could have changed my career, and raced to his house. My mind spun with 1,000 horrible possibilities, each one more devastating than the last. But when I stepped through his front door, the world tilted on its axis. There he was, sitting in his favorite leather armchair, a newspaper in his hand, looking as robust and healthy as ever. He looked up, a puzzled expression on his face. "Hadley, what on earth are you doing here?" he asked, his voice steady. My own voice caught in my throat. "Mom called. She said you fell, that you were badly hurt." His face tightened, a dark shadow crossing his features. A sickening realization washed over me. Something was terribly, horribly wrong. I sank onto the couch, my knees weak, the dim glow of my phone illuminating the dark room as I scrolled through those Bahamian photos again and again. My mother's smile, her arm linked with Lucas's. My father raising a glass as if toasting to my absence. They had planned this behind my back, using the man I loved most to keep me away while they celebrated my exclusion. My hands shook as I zoomed in on Lucas's smug face. How could they have done this? My grandfather sat down beside me, his face etched with a familiar sorrow. "Hadley," he began, his voice a steady anchor in the storm raging within me. "There's something else you need to know." My heart pounded against my ribs as he reached into a desk drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder. The folder was heavy, its contents a weight he'd been carrying for years. "This is everything," he said, handing it to me. "I've been tracking it all." I opened the folder and my world didn't just tilt, it collapsed. Bank statements, trust fund reports, and legal documents lay bare before me, pages and pages of proof that my parents had been systematically stealing from me for years. My eyes scanned the transactions, each one a hammer blow to my soul. $100,000 for Lucas's failed startup, another 100 for his sports car, his lavish private school tuition, all of it my money. The $5 million trust fund, meant for both of us, had been funneled almost entirely to him. I felt like I couldn't breathe, a crushing weight of betrayal suffocating me. But there was more. "They're planning to give the hotel chain to Lucas," my grandfather said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "My dad's finalizing the paperwork now. The Harris Hotels, the legacy I had dreamed of helping to build, the business that was supposed to be our shared future, they were cutting me out completely. Every late night, every client I'd fought for, every sacrifice I'd made to prove myself worthy, It was all for nothing. They had been planning to erase me all along. My grandfather's hand found mine, a solid, grounding presence. "You don't have to let this happen, Hadley," he said, his eyes fierce. A spark ignited in my chest, a fire of cold, hard determination. They thought I'd just stay quiet, just like I always had, but I was done being their doormat. I called my Aunt Julia, a corporate attorney who had left the family business years ago, disgusted with my parents' backhanded dealings. When she arrived, she took one look at the folder and her face hardened. "This is fraud, Hadley. They've been siphoning your inheritance, and if they're moving money to offshore accounts, they're planning a clean getaway." My blood ran cold. They weren't just stealing from me, they were planning to vanish with what was left. "We can stop them," Julia said, her eyes glinting, "but we have to move fast. For years, I had swallowed my pain, hoping they would one day see me. But now I saw them for who they truly were, people who rather destroy me than share what was rightfully mine." We hit them where it hurts, their reputation. The next morning, I sat with Julia and my grandfather, my phone in my hand. My parents lived for their perfect image, successful hoteliers, pillars of Atlanta's elite. I was about to tear that image down. I opened Instagram, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I typed, my hands steady despite the cold rage burning in my chest. Funny how my parents lied about my grandfather's health to keep me from our family vacation. Funnier still, how they took my $5 million trust fund and the Harris hotels and gave it all to Lucas. They thought I'd never find out. I hit post and held my breath. The notifications exploded. The truth was out, and it was spreading like wildfire. The fallout was unstoppable. Reporters called, investors began pulled back, and Julia and I filed legal papers to freeze the hotel chain's transfer to Lucas. That night, my grandfather handed me one last document. My heart raced as I read the small print. A clause nobody had ever noticed stated that if dishonesty or misconduct was proven, control of the business could be revoked. This was our ace, the key to everything. "We've got them," I said, a fire in my chest. "Let's finish this." The next morning, I walked into the Harris Hotel's downtown office, the contract clutched in my hand. My heart was a drum in my chest, but my steps were steady. For years, I had felt like a ghost, an outsider in my own family. But today, I was taking back what was mine. I pushed open the door to my father's corner office and found them both frantically stuffing papers into a shredder. They froze when they saw me, their faces paling as if they'd been caught in a crime. "You don't belong here," my dad snapped, his voice a desperate snarl. I held up the contract, my voice calm, but with an edge of steel. "Actually, I do." His eyes narrowed, but I saw the flicker of fear in them. I took another step forward. "You missed a clause, Dad. The one that says if you're caught lying or stealing, you lose everything." He snatched the paper, his jaw tightening, as he read the words. My mother gripped the desk, her face a mask of desperation. "Hadley, let's talk about this," she pleaded, her voice shaky. The office door swung open again, and two federal agents stepped inside, followed by Aunt Julia and my grandfather. My dad's face drained of all color. "What is this?" he shouted. One of the agents, a woman in a sharp suit, spoke with quiet authority. "Mr. Harris, we have evidence of financial fraud and offshore transfers. You and your wife are under arrest." My mother gasped, clutching my father's arm. "Do something," she hissed. But he was frozen, the contract still in his hand. I pulled out a second folder. Bank records, trust fund statements, proof of every dollar they'd stolen. "This shows you took $5 million that was mine." My father's eyes burned with a cold rage. "You think you've won," he spat. I met his gaze unflinching. "I'm not trying to win. I'm taking back what's mine." As the agents cuffed my parents, a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying finally lifted. For the first time, I wasn't the invisible daughter. I was the one in control. The weeks that followed were a blur. The court case was swift, with Aunt Julia meticulously presenting the evidence of every lie and every stolen dollar. The judge ruled the hotel chain transfer to Lucas was fraudulent and void. My parents' attempt to rewrite the family legacy collapsed. The business they tried to steal from me was now mine. My parents faced prison for financial fraud, and Lucas, stripped of their money and influence, was left to fend for himself. He sent me a half-hearted apology, but I didn't respond. Some betrayals cut too deep. Taking over wasn't easy. My father had left a massive shady deals and unpaid staff, but I got to work, paying back wages, setting up a scholarship fund for employees' children, and opening the books for transparency. Slowly, trust grew. The hotel began to feel like a place where people wanted to work, not just had to. One evening, I sat on the rooftop of our flagship hotel with my grandfather, the Atlanta skyline sparkling below. He sipped his coffee, a quiet smile on his face. "You know, I always knew you had it in you," he said. "Had what?" I asked. He leaned back, his eyes warm. "The strength to turn their lies into your truth." He was right. They had tried to break me, to erase me, but all they had done was show me what I was capable of. I wasn't just surviving their betrayal, I was thriving. I am no longer a footnote in someone else's story. I am the author of my own. I rebuilt a legacy of honor, a testament to the idea that true wealth isn't in what you inherit, but in what you build. And in the end, the greatest victory wasn't just getting what was mine, but realizing I was never really lost to begin with. The question that remains is not whether I will succeed, but what defines success. Was my victory a triumph of justice, or a descent into the very ruthlessness my family embodied? Was I truly different from them, or had I simply learned their game?